There's been a conservative pundit on Twitter that attacked keeping the Sabbath and attacked saying Shabbat Shalom in December. And then this weekend she did it again. And as I said in my last video, which was called Some Early Church History, I think it was called that on Twitter, and on YouTube I called it Early Church History. But as I said in the video, nobody really believes that days don't matter. You know, a lot of people say days don't matter. It doesn't matter what day you keep. Well, God said it mattered. And this person who gets very annoyed when people keep the Lord's Sabbath, she clearly thinks it matters. And yet people say days don't matter. Nobody really believes that. Go watch my latest video for more on early church history. I talk about what Edward Gibbon said in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire with respect to the early Jerusalem church, with respect to the first 15 bishops of the Jerusalem church were circumcised Jews. I talk about the first that wasn't, Marcus in 135 AD. I talk about Aelia Capitolina. You've heard me talk about that stuff before, but I show where Gibbon mentioned it in a real history book. I wasn't making it up. So anyway, sometimes people will claim days don't matter. Few really believe that. Certainly the conservative pundit that's been attacking Shabbat Shalom, she believes it matters. But what she did is somebody posted, I'm taking a break for the weekend, Shabbat Shalom. And she replied that that was heresy and then quoted Canon 29 of the Council of Laodicea. What does Canon 29 say of the Council of Laodicea around 364 AD? And it was the Roman Church's Council of Laodicea. Quote, Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's day, and, if they can, resting then as Christians. But if any shall be found to be Judaizers, let them be anathema from Christ. Let them be anathema from Christ. A little tongue-tied there. Once again, I'm going to read that again. Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day. This is me interjecting. Man says work. The ever-living one says rest. There's a conflict there. Man is not in harmony with the ever-living one who said to rest. Where in this book does it ever give any man or church the right to contradict what Almighty God commanded? Anyway, I'm going to read it one more time with my mouth shut. This is Canon 29 of the Council of Laodicea. And I was shocked to see, normally it's people that are Sabbatarians quoting that to show that it was changed by the Roman Church. Quote, Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's day, and, if they can, resting then as Christians. But if any shall be found to be Judaizers, let them be anathema from Christ, end quote. So, as I've said, mostly it's Sabbatarians that tend to quote that as the proof that it was changed by the Roman Church. See, but people like, I guess, Emerald Robinson, who cited that Canon 29, they believe three things, the Catholic Church. 3 points. One, the Roman Church changed the day of worship. The Protestants try to claim that it was changed in the Bible or by Christ or Paul. That's not true. The Catholic Church admits they changed it, and they did. So they make basically 3 points. One, we changed the day. Two, we had the right to change the day, to institute Sunday, I should say. And three, those churches who keep Sunday are tacitly admitting the Roman Church's authority over them. They're right about point one and point three. They instituted Sunday. It wasn't instituted by the Apostolic Church or the Bible. I'll give you three passages why. And they're right in point three that the churches that keep Sunday and that keep their other major holidays are tacitly admitting the Roman Church's authority over them. They are wrong if they think they had the right to do it, though. You know, I was thinking of directly responding to her post, but I do not go on other people's posts and attack. People should have a right to say what they want. I'm not trying to harass people for what they believe. I only respond to critics if they come on my posts and if I feel like it. But I was tempted to go on her post and attack it, But I don't believe in doing that. People have a right to say what they want, and we should be all about love. I'm not trying to convince people to believe as I do. That's not my main point here. My main point is to get people to think, to present the historical evidence and the biblical evidence, and then let people make their own mind up. If people don't agree with what I have to say, what am I going to do? Harass them about it? They honestly don't agree. Doesn't mean we have to be enemies. So, anyway, this is an interesting point. Do they have the right to change the day? If you go to Daniel 7, it talks about 4 Gentile world ruling powers: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. That's in Daniel 7. And then if you go to Daniel 7:25, it is referring to a power affiliated with the fourth beast, with the fourth kingdom, which is Rome. You could see in verse 19 of Daniel 7, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. And then it goes on talking about a power affiliated with the fourth beast, which was Rome. And in verse 25, and this is not in a favorable light, it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. So we do see, people that think that their church had the right to institute a day of worship in opposition to God's day of worship, that thought they had the right to change times and laws, they clearly don't. And it's interesting that Daniel 7 verse 25 does predict that a power affiliated with Rome would think to change times and laws, and that happened. So when people do try to debate the Sabbath, I will say this: the Roman Church's arguments and scholars are more logical, because they don't make false claims that the day was changed in this book. They don't claim it was changed by Christ, and it wasn't. They say, no, our church instituted Sunday. They say that. They say we had the right to do it, and they say the churches who keep Sunday are tacitly admitting our authority. They're right on points 1 and 3, but they're not right that they had the right to change it. Now I'm going to give you 3 passages which should settle the issue. 3 of them. 2 of them, Sabbath opponents don't even try to explain. They just ignore them. The one I'm going to deal with first, they do try to explain it, but it's not really a satisfying explanation. Matthew 24. If you read the chapter, the primary fulfillment is not 70 AD. It's the end time, because if you read Matthew 24, verse 27, for as the lightning comes out of the east and shines even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. It talks about the coming of the Son of Man. In fact, my heading of the King James here under this chapter, Matthew 24, starting in it begins with verse 26, says the signs of Christ's coming to judgment. That's the primary fulfillment. Matthew 24, verse 20. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on Sunday. No, it doesn't say that. It says, pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Why, if the church wouldn't be keeping it? Because when Christ said this, he knew that the church would be keeping it. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. It's talking about the great tribulation at the end. But people that do not keep the Sabbath like to say this is referring to 70 AD, not the end time. 2 problems with that. 1, if you read the chapter, the primary fulfillment is clearly the end time, because the next verse says, except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then keep reading. Like I said, you go to verse 27, it literally talks about his return. So that's why that's wrong, to say it's referring to 70 AD. But even if you think it is referring to 70 AD, this is proof that in 70 AD, Christ's followers would still be keeping the Sabbath. In other words, it's proof that the Sabbath was not abrogated by Christ or by the early apostolic church. So whether you believe it's 70 AD or the end time, either way, it shows that the early church kept the Sabbath. Now here's 2 passages they don't even try to explain. At least I haven't heard the explanations. Referring to a time in the future, Isaiah 66. Start in verse 22. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. Isaiah 66, verse 23, clearly shows that in the future, all mankind will worship the ever-living one from one Sabbath to another. So why do we think it was done away? The fourth commandment in Exodus 20 does not say best if used by 31 AD. The blessing was put on a day. It was never taken off. Nobody even tries to say that. And here's the main verse that Sabbath opponents can't explain. My most popular YouTube video is called, I think, the verse the Sabbath opponents can't explain away. It's something like that. And I deal with this. Matthew 12, start in verse 11. Start in verse 10. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days, that they might accuse him? Now, if we are to believe some of the antinomians that say days don't matter, which, like I said, few believe that. Because if that was the case, then why do they get so mad when Christians like me and others say we should keep the fourth commandment? My opinion is because when they see Christians keeping the Sabbath, it's a subtle reminder to them that they are not fully obeying God, and that bothers their conscience. And that's why, even if people are just quietly keeping the Sabbath, the fact that there are Christians keeping the Sabbath, it seems to rub those that don't keep it the wrong way. Or else, why were they persecuted throughout history? Back to Matthew 12. Now, in verse 10, they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? If he was a modern Protestant preacher, he would say something like, days don't matter. Are you trying to earn your salvation? All days are alike. Stuff that Christ didn't say. He never said days don't matter. Not days of worship. And the Sabbath is not what's referred to in Romans 14. I've done a video on that. Don't have time to talk about it now. Verse 11. But he didn't say that. He didn't say, you don't have to keep the Sabbath anymore. Stop being legalistic. He said, what man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it and lift it out? Verse 12 of Matthew 12, the one verse the Sabbath opponents can't explain. And like I said, I don't go debate Sabbath opponents. I don't go on their posts. We shouldn't be disagreeable. We shouldn't be harassing people. We should all be about love. If you don't like hearing about the Sabbath, don't watch the video. You're not my target audience. My target audience is those who are sincerely looking for the truth, those that want to know about the history, those that want to know the how and the why the day of worship was changed for most people, and those who keep the Sabbath, who want more evidence to bolster their faith. That's my target audience. I don't go harass people that think otherwise. How much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days. Matthew 12, verse 12. Why would Christ bother talking about what is lawful to do on a day that he knew was shortly not going to be obligatory anymore? Makes no sense. If the day was going to be changed, wouldn't he have known about it? But he knew it wasn't going to be changed. Why would he bother talking about what is lawful to do on a day that we don't have to keep anymore? Makes no sense. And they don't try to explain that. So, like I said, the thing that occasioned this video was that the certain conservative columnist, she, second time now, once in December and once this past weekend, is getting triggered by those that say Shabbat Shalom. Why should it bother anybody? If someone says Happy Sunday, or Happy Lord's Day, they call it that, it's not going to offend me. Incidentally, Sunday is not the Lord's Day of Revelation 1, verse 10. Neither is Saturday. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day should be the day of the Lord. It is referring to the day of the Lord, which is the day of God's wrath on the nations. Zephaniah 1, verse 14 mentions the day of the Lord, and verse 15 calls it, quote, that day is a day of wrath. Now, you want to know proof that Revelation 1, verse 10 is not referring to a day of the week, but it's referring to the year of God's judgment? It's referring to the day of the Lord. Look at Revelation 6, verse 12. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. That's Revelation 6, verse 12. Compare that with Joel 2, verse 31. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come. If you read Isaiah 34, verse 8, and Isaiah 61, verse 2, it implies it's going to be a time period of 1 year. I can't prove that, but there's indications it may be 1 year. It is when God comes to punish the sinful nations. It's not referring to a Sunday or a Sabbath. Also compare Joel 2, verse 11. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible, and who can abide it? With Revelation 6, verse 17. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So compare Revelation 6, verse 12 with Joel 2, verse 31. Revelation 6, verse 17 with Joel 2, verse 11. It is referring to the day of God's wrath, which, as Isaiah 34, verse 8 hints, might be 1 year period of time. But it's not referring to Sunday or the Sabbath, if we're biblically honest and literate. So, like I said, it's sad that people get triggered by those saying Shabbat Shalom. I don't get triggered by people believing differently. If somebody's strong in their convictions and they're confident, why do you care? Is it because the Sabbath is a subtle reminder to you that you are consciously disobeying God on one of his commandments? I don't know. I just thought I would use this as an excuse to comment on it, as an excuse to make another promotion for my video last week, where I do quote from Edward Gibbon about the Ebionites, the Nazarenes, and the early Jerusalem church, Aelia Capitolina, Hadrian, and Marcus. I mentioned that in the video. And I wanted to go to those three passages that really prove that we should still be keeping the Sabbath and that the blessing wasn't taken off. Isaiah 66, verse 23, go read it for yourself. Matthew 24, verses 20 through 21, go read it for yourself. And Matthew 12, verse 12, where Christ talks about what is lawful to do on a Sabbath, which is not what he would waste his time talking about if he knew the need to keep it was going to be done away with. So I'm not trying to argue with people or to attack people. I'm trying to provoke thought. Go read history like this for yourself. Read this book for yourself. And don't get triggered or angry if people believe otherwise. We should have a spirit of love. We shouldn't have hate in our hearts. If we have Christ dwelling in us, and he will dwell in us if we are his. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. If we are his, then Christ is living in us. And Christ living in us won't hate other people. Peace all. And for those who are keeping the Sabbath, I'll wish you an early Shabbat Shalom. Peace.